Previously in Surah Yunus, Allah Azza wa Jal had told us about prophethood. We shouldn't be surprised, he said, that a loving, knowing God who wants us to succeed should communicate with us and try to guide us. This should not be surprising at all. We should not be surprised that all the prophets were men sent to their own communities. We should not be surprised that the job of the messengers is to warn people about the eternal consequences of the decisions that they make in their life here on earth. We should not be surprised that those who are sincere and open to guidance and faith will be rewarded with a position of honor. We should not be surprised that those who deny and reject guidance and faith will be punished for their insolence. And if we are surprised by any of this, any of it at all, it shows that we don't really know Allah. Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to teach us about himself in the very next verse. He says, إِنَّ رَبَّكُمُ اللَّهُ الَّذِي خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ فِي سِتَّةِ أَيَّامٍ ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى عَلَى الْعَرْشِ يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرَ مَا مِنْ شَفِيعٍ إِلَّا مِنْ بَعْدِ إِذْنِهِ ذَلِكُمُ اللَّهُ رَبُّكُمْ فَاعْبُدُوهُ أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Indeed, your Lord is Allah, who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days and then established himself above the throne. He arranges the matter. There is no intercession except after his permission. That is Allah, your Lord, so worship him. Then will you not remember? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala focuses here on our indebtedness to him. Because any decent person, when they're reminded of their indebtedness, will feel grateful and want to show that gratitude. Your Lord is Allah. We translate Rabb as Lord, but in Arabic it means so much more. Rabb is the one who cares for you, who provides for you. Rabb is the one you depend upon for everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that he is our sustainer. Then he tells us about the creation. Allah created everything, the heavens and the earth. Allah reminds us of his power to create time and time again because it is so unique. Try as we might, we cannot create in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates. When people invent things, we simply rearrange other things that already exist. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone creates from nothing. We toil away to invent new things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala simply says, be, and it is. Several times in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points out that the inability to create is a telltale sign of a false God. In Al-Furqan, he says, وَاتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِهِ آلِهَةً لَا يَخْلُقُونَ شَيْئًا وَهُمْ يُخْلَقُونَ. And they invented for themselves gods instead of Allah that can't create a thing. Rather, they are themselves created. In Surah Al-A'raf, أَيُشْرِكُونَ مَا لَا يَخْلُقُ شَيْئًا وَهُمْ يُخْلَقُونَ. Do they worship those that cannot create a thing, but rather they themselves are created? In Surah Al-Nahl, وَالَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ لَا يَخْلُقُونَ شَيْئًا وَهُمْ يُخْلَقُونَ. And those who they pray to besides Allah, they can't create anything. Rather, they themselves are created. As people, we, of course, are part of this creation. We live within this creation. All of our joys and success, all of our good times and happiness, it wouldn't be possible if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had not made it all in the first place. And since creation is unique to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our indebtedness and thus our gratitude should solely be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes this point is too abstract for us to really grasp. Let's take an example most of us can understand. Having children is an enormous responsibility. It's hard enough to be a parent, even in the best of circumstances. Let's imagine for a second that you're a single parent, and we have plenty of single parents in our community. May Allah assist them. Imagine your children and everything it takes to raise them and put them on a path where they can succeed, and you have to do it all by yourself. You work long hours at a thankless job. You don't take time off. You forego the finer things in life. You sacrifice your youth and your health. You make sure that your children are involved in the right activities. You make sure they study hard and that they work hard to get good grades. You do everything in your power to set them up for success, and you pay this price willingly with a smile on your face. Imagine graduation day. Your child is valedictorian, full scholarships to whatever university they want to go to. Every day your mailbox is stuffed with acceptance letters from colleges trying to compete for your child's attention. The entire world lies before them, and they step up onto that stage to deliver their graduation speech, and they don't thank you. They thank someone else, who in reality was on the periphery, someone who was inconsequential. They thank someone else who didn't ever have to wash the laundry or cook the meals or drive them to practice. Who would not feel slighted? Now, the analogy here isn't perfect. All parents make mistakes. No parent is perfect. And sometimes we lose sight of everything our parents do for us because we're so aware of their shortcomings. But what about Allah? What about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is perfect? What about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has no shortcomings? What about Allah azza wa jalla who is much more responsible for our success than any parent? What an insult to not single Him out for worship and devotion. And while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above the pettiness of feeling slighted, He tells us time and time again that we are only hurting ourselves by our ingratitude. Because those things that we are devoted to besides Him, those things that we trust in besides Him, those things that we are grateful to besides Allah, whether it's luck, whether it's our zodiac sign, whether it's the blue beads or our own abilities, they will not help us on the day of resurrection. They will be useless. And only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will matter. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala follows up the subject of creation in this surah with the subject of intercession. مَا مِنْ شَفِيعٍ إِلَّا مِنْ بَعْدِ إِذْنِ ذَلِكُمُ اللَّهُ رَبُّكُمْ فَاعْبُدُوهُ أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. There is no intercessor except after His permission. That's Allah, your Lord. So worship Him. Then will you not remember? The Quraysh and all idolaters really were duped by the idea of a shortcut. Instead of being held accountable by the all-knowing Allah Azza wa Jal, they hoped to have favor with the imperfect idols who would then save them from Allah subhanahu. What a miscalculation. Nothing can save you from being responsible to Allah. Not an idol, not an amulet, not a wali. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He is in control of everything. So worship and be devoted to Him alone. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله الحمد لله على إحسانه والشكر له على توفيقه وامتنانه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له تعظيما لشأنه وأشهد أن نبينا وسيدنا محمد عبده ورسوله والداعي إلى رضوانه صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وإخوانه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then tells us about the resurrection. إليه مرجعكم جميعا وعد الله حقا إنه يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيده ليجزي الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات بالقسط والذين كفروا لهم شراب من حميم وعذاب أليم بما كانوا يكفرون. To him is your return altogether. This is the promise of Allah, the truth. Indeed, he begins the creation and then he repeats it, so that he may reward those who have believed and done righteous deeds in justice. But those who denied will have a drink of scalding water and a painful punishment for what they used to deny. We aren't going to return before anyone else. We're not going to stand in front of anyone else on the day of judgment, just us and Allah. This is his promise. And if that level of responsibility, if that level of accountability makes us uncomfortable, such that we might be tempted to doubt it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he reasons with us. He says, look, I created everything in the first place. Don't you think I have the power to bring it all back? This life isn't random. It's not accidental. It's not without purpose. Our consciousness will not end with the death of our bodies. We aren't headed to a cold void of annihilation. The soul will live on. The soul will live on in the grave, waiting for resurrection, when the people of faith, the people of gratitude, will finally have justice served. All the hardship they suffered will finally be avenged. And the people who insisted that this life was without purpose, that we are just here animals to eat and to drink and to reproduce, those are the people who will be punished. And if anyone is in doubt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invites them to use their reason and reflect on what they see around them. هو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا وقدره منازل لتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب ما خلق الله ذلك إلا بالحق يفصل الآيات لقوم يعلمون. It is he who made the sun a shining light and the moon a reflection of that light and determined phases for it, so that you may know the number of years in the account of time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not created this except in truth. He details signs for people who know. Look around you. The sun is like a burning lamp. We only use the word diya in Arabic for something that produces light. The sun lets us see, it gives us warmth. Plants use it to grow and make medicine and food for other animals. It's all for us. The moon, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word nur for the moon, which is not something that produces light itself, but something that reflects light. And that light, which we don't depend on for warmth, it changes so that we can keep track of time. Who created a more perfect system? It's all Allah's signature, the signature of a master creator. The signature is there for people who know where to look. إِنَّ فِي اخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ وَمَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَّقُونَ. Indeed, in the alternation of night and in day, and in what Allah has created in the heavens and the earth, are signs for people who fear Allah. Fearing Allah, being conscious of Allah, being mindful, being aware of Allah comes first. For people who are sincere, for people who are looking for guidance, who are sincerely looking for proof, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show you the way. The signs are literally everywhere. إن الذين لا يرجون لقاءنا ورضوا بالحياة الدنيا وطمأنوا بها والذين هم عن آياتنا غافلون أولئك مأواهم النار بما كانوا يكسبون. Indeed, those who do not anticipate a meeting with us, those who are satisfied with the life of this world and feel secure therein, and those who are heedless of our signs, for those their refuge will be the fire, and that is what they earned. Those who don't want guidance will never find it. Those who don't want to be grateful will never see the signs, no matter how many they are. It's like driving on a 4-lane highway, 2 lanes going each way. You've got cars in both lanes, side by side, you're cruising down the road. All of a sudden, there's a sign that says the road is going to go down to just 1 lane. You're going to have to merge. The first sign tells you the right lane is going to end in 1 mile. Some people in the right lane are going to merge right away, aren't they? But other people are going to wait until the last possible moment. Right lane ends in half a mile. There's still a few people in the right lane. Maybe they're even putting their foot on the gas to get ahead of other people. Right lane ends in a 1/4 mile. There's only 1 or 2 people still in that right lane and they're not slowing down at all. Finally, here comes the time to merge. The traffic cones are out. It's not possible to continue in the right lane. But now there are so many people in the left lane that there's nowhere to go. They have to pull to a complete stop on the highway and wait. They're angry. They're laying on the horn because no one would let them in. Yeah, akhi, you had a chance a mile back. You did this to yourself. You saw the signs, but you chose to ignore them because you were in denial. You wanted to speed down that right lane with no one in your way as long as it was possible to, and now you have to pay for not getting in line earlier. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ يَهْدِيهِمْ رَبُّهُمْ بِإِيمَانِهِمْ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهِمُ الْأَنْهَارُ فِي جَنَّاتِ النَّعِيمِ. Indeed, those who have believed and done righteous deeds, their Lord will guide them because of their faith. Beneath them, rivers will flow in the gardens of pleasure. Allah tells us how it works. He guides those who have faith. What is that faith? Allah gives us a definition: belief and righteous deeds. We need to know what to believe, first of all. Then we need to affirm it in our hearts. And then we need to act on what we believe, putting it into practice. If we work on ourselves, if we do our part, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continue to guide us. Sometimes we wonder why our hearts feel dead. Why don't we cry when we read the Quran? If we read the Quran at all. Why don't we feel motivated? Why don't we feel reverence and awe for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Look back at the last 5 years, the last 10 years. What was your practice of Islam like? Have you been doing the same old things year in and year out? Can we expect our hearts to feel alive when our practice of Islam is so stale and routine? When we put in the effort and orient ourselves with sincerity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring the results that we're looking for. The results in this life are the motivation, the reverence, the awe. And in the afterlife, the results are even better. دعواهم فيها سبحانك اللهم وتحيتهم فيها سلام وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. Their call therein, we're talking paradise, will be exalted are you, O Allah. And their greeting therein will be peace. And the last call will be praise to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. In paradise, the people of faith will praise Allah because He is responsible for our success. Our greeting to each other will be peace, and this time we really mean it. When we say salam in the dunya, oftentimes we don't feel very peaceful. Either on our end of things we don't feel peaceful, maybe our world is falling apart around us, and we say salam almost as a prayer, hoping for some peace. In paradise, we will finally feel that peace that we have been wishing for each other all along, inside and out. And saying peace to each other will not be a hope, but it will be a recognition of this blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provided for us. Our last call will put the praise and thanks right where it belongs. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. This is our graduation speech, filled with gratitude and praise for the only one who deserves it.